The hearing room was charged with tension from the very beginning. Mark Levin leaned forward, his voice sharp, as he attacked Jasmine Crockett again and again. He accused her of being unprepared, of twisting facts, and of dodging questions. His interruptions came fast, each more aggressive than the last, as though he believed sheer force would break her composure. But Crockett didn't flinch. She sat still, letting Levin run himself ragged, her eyes steady and her notes untouched. The audience shifted uncomfortably, some whispering as Levin's repeated interruptions became less about debate and more about trying to dominate the exchange. Cameras zoomed in, catching every smirk he tried to deliver and every roll of the eyes he directed at her. Then, when he finally paused to catch his breath, Crockett leaned forward. Her voice was calm but cutting, carrying across the entire room without needing to be raised. "Mark," she said, "you can interrupt me all day, but the facts don't change, and neither does the truth." The room went silent. Levin blinked, caught off guard, his momentum shattered. Crockett let the words linger, refusing to elaborate. She didn't need to. The single sentence cut through every one of his accusations, leaving him with nothing to grasp onto. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Mark Levin, visibly irritated, tried to recover from the sting of Crockett's sentence. He shuffled his papers loudly, as if the noise alone could re-establish control of the moment. His voice rose again, more desperate this time, insisting that Crockett was avoiding accountability. But Crockett didn't let him drag her into his frantic rhythm. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, the faintest smile forming on her face. She knew the cameras were still locked on her, and every viewer at home was waiting to see how she would answer. When Levin demanded, "Are you even capable of addressing the real issues?" Crockett calmly folded her hands on the table. She waited for his voice to trail off, then replied, "I am, Mark, but you seem more interested in attacking me than solving anything for the people who sent us here." That line drew murmurs from the audience. Some leaned forward, others nodded, and even a few of Levin's usual supporters shifted uncomfortably. Crockett's words weren't just aimed at him, they were aimed at everyone watching, reminding them of why this debate mattered. Levin's face tightened. He had thrown every interruption he could, and now Crockett was turning his aggression into a spotlight on his own behavior. Levin slammed his hand on the desk, trying to drown out the ripple of murmurs in the room. His voice thundered, accusing Crockett of being all show and no substance. He leaned closer to the microphone, practically barking his words, hoping volume would mask the cracks in his argument. But Crockett didn't even flinch. She simply leaned back in her chair, letting him finish, her calm presence contrasting sharply with his fury. When he finally stopped to breathe, she raised her eyebrows and spoke slowly, every word landing like a hammer. "Mark, the difference between us is simple, you shout, I serve." The room erupted. Gasps, scattered applause, and even a few stunned laughs filled the chamber. The moderator tried to restore order, but the damage was done. Levin's attack suddenly looked like desperation, while Crockett's composure looked like strength. Levin clenched his jaw, clearly rattled. He opened his mouth as if to fire back, but nothing came out fast enough. The silence on his end spoke louder than any insult he had thrown her way. Reporters in the back of the chamber were already scribbling notes furiously, sensing that they had just witnessed a viral moment in the making. Cameras zoomed in on Levin's stiff expression, catching every flicker of frustration that he tried to hide. Crockett, meanwhile, took advantage of the silence. She leaned slightly toward the mic, her voice even but commanding. "People don't tune in for shouting matches," she said, glancing at Levin before turning back to the audience. "They tune in to hear solutions. If my colleague has any, I'll gladly let him share them. Otherwise, I'll keep talking about what matters." The crowd buzzed louder now. Her tone wasn't angry, it was dismissive, almost as if she had moved past him entirely. Levin shifted in his chair, his earlier fire slipping into visible discomfort. For the first time, it looked like he wasn't in control of the narrative. Commentators on social media clipped the moment instantly. Within minutes, captions like, "Crockett School's Levin Live," began circulating. Viewers who had only tuned in halfway now understood why the room seemed to shift on its axis. Levin tried to clear his throat, fumbling with his papers, but Crockett had already stolen the spotlight. Levin tried to regain control by rattling off a long list of talking points, his words rushed and jumbled together. He waved his notes around, hoping the sheer volume of accusations would overwhelm Crockett. But the more he spoke, the less convincing he sounded, like a man drowning in his own noise. Crockett waited patiently, her hands folded, eyes fixed on him with a calm intensity. When he finally paused, she didn't even address his scattered claims one by one. Instead, she delivered a single, piercing response. "Mark, when you spend more time attacking me than addressing the truth, it tells everyone here exactly what your priorities are." The chamber went still again. This time, the silence wasn't just shock, it was recognition. Even those on Levin's side couldn't deny that she had sliced through his entire tirade with one line. Crockett then smoothly transitioned into her own arguments, laying out clear points with confidence. The contrast was glaring, her measured tone against his frenzied interruptions. Cameras caught Levin's jaw tightening, his eyes darting to the crowd, realizing he was losing them. The audience leaned in, not to him, but to her. A wave of whispers swept across the chamber, and this time it wasn't just murmurs, it was audible approval. A few people even clapped quietly before being hushed by the moderator. Levin's face flushed red as he realized the room was slipping away from him. Crockett seized the moment. She leaned forward, her tone steady and deliberate. "We're not here to perform," she said, her eyes locked on Levin. "We're here to deliver answers. If shouting and insults are your plan, then you've already failed the people watching." The words landed hard. Reporters' heads snapped up, pens scratching faster as they caught the line. The camera stayed on Crockett, framing her as the composed professional while Levin fidgeted in his chair. Levin tried to interject again, but this time the crowd reacted. A low rumble of disapproval rose up, a clear signal that they were tired of his interruptions. Someone in the back muttered loudly enough to be picked up by the microphones, "Let her speak." That was the breaking point. Crockett glanced briefly toward the audience, acknowledging their support with a slight nod, before turning back to Levin as if daring him to try again. Levin's lips tightened into a thin line. He gripped the microphone, his knuckles pale, but when he opened his mouth, the words came out shaky. You think this is about me?" "It's about accountability," he barked, his voice cracking under the pressure. Crockett didn't blink. She tilted her head, her voice cool and sharp. "Accountability is exactly why I'm here, Mark. But it looks like the only one avoiding it is you." The chamber erupted. This time, applause broke through the moderator's attempts to quiet the room. Some members leaned back, smirking at Levin's unraveling, while others exchanged wide-eyed looks at Crockett's precision strike. Levin stammered, waving his papers like a shield. That's not true," he began, but the cameras caught his hesitation, the falter in his tone. Crockett, on the other hand, remained unshaken. She sat with the calm authority of someone who had already won, and the audience could feel it. For the first time, Levin looked small behind his desk. Every interruption, every attack he had unleashed now seemed to have backfired, building the stage for Crockett's dominance. Levin shuffled his notes again, desperate to recover. His voice wavered as he tried to throw out another accusation, but before he could build momentum, Crockett leaned forward, her tone steady and commanding. "Mark, let me make something clear," she began, her eyes sweeping across the chamber. "I came here prepared to discuss solutions, to talk about real issues that affect real people. You came here to shout at me. And every time you interrupt, you prove to the public that your priority isn't solving problems, it's silencing those who dare to disagree with you." The room fell into stunned silence, every word slicing through Levin's bluster. Reporters froze mid-sentence, staring at her, as if they didn't want to miss a single syllable. Crockett didn't stop there. She pressed on, her voice rising just enough to command attention. "If you think that will work on me, you've miscalculated. I don't break under noise. I break down arguments, with facts. And unlike you, I don't need to yell to be heard." The audience erupted again, this time louder, clapping and nodding. Cameras caught Levin's face flushing, his eyes darting down to his notes, searching desperately for a comeback that just wouldn't come. Crockett had flipped the entire exchange. She wasn't just defending herself anymore, she was dismantling Levin's credibility in front of the nation. The moderators tried to calm the crowd, but it was impossible. Crockett's words had already struck like lightning. Phones in the audience glowed as people typed furiously, Liv tweeting her takedown before Levin could even recover. Levin shifted uncomfortably, his voice strained as he muttered, "That's not what this is about," but his attempt at damage control sounded weak, almost apologetic. The cameras caught it, and within seconds, the contrast between his faltering tone and Crockett's steady confidence was undeniable. Meanwhile, Crockett sat upright, her posture perfect, her presence unshakable. She didn't even need to respond immediately, silence became her weapon. Every second she let Levin stumble was another victory. On social media, hashtags exploded, hashtag Crockett clapback, hashtag Levin shutdown, and hashtag one sentence win climbed the trending lists. Clips of her lines were already being replayed with captions like asterisk, "This is how you handle a bully." Asterisk. In the press section, reporters exchanged knowing glances. They had all seen heated exchanges before, but this wasn't just another clash, this was a collapse. Levin was unraveling in real time, and Crockett was cementing herself as the voice of reason. The hearing was still underway, but outside those walls, the public verdict was already forming, and it wasn't in Levin's favor. Levin tried one last push, raising his voice to drown out the whispers and clapping in the room. "You're twisting everything, Jasmine. You're avoiding the truth," he barked, his words tripping over themselves. Crockett slowly leaned toward her mic, not rushing, not flustered. Her calm delivery was a stark contrast to his frantic energy. "The truth," she said, her voice sharp but measured. "The truth is that while you waste your time shouting at me, I'm the one standing here actually answering to the people. That's the difference between performance and leadership." The chamber erupted again, this time in a wave of applause too strong for the moderator to contain. Cameras zoomed in on Levin's face, capturing his jaw tightening, his eyes narrowing as he realized he had walked straight into her framing. Crockett didn't stop. She pressed her advantage. "Every interruption, every insult, you thought it made you look strong. But it only made it clear you had no argument left. And that's why I don't need more than one sentence to end this back and forth." The crowd roared. Some members stood. Levin's shoulders slumped, his papers trembling slightly in his hands. He had nothing left to throw at her. In that instant, Crockett didn't just win the exchange, she owned it. Her words weren't just heard in that room, they were echoing far beyond it. As the hearing wrapped up, reporters rushed out into the hallway, phones pressed to their ears and cameras rolling. The buzz was immediate, every outlet knew they had just witnessed the headline moment of the day. Within minutes, news alerts flashed across screens. Crockett silences Levin with one line, asterisk, Levin loses control in heated exchange. Asterisk clips of the moment were already circulating online, with millions of views piling up faster than the networks could count. Outside the chamber, Levin's team tried to spin the situation, claiming he had pressed her hard on accountability, but no one was buying it. The raw footage told a different story, his raised voice, his interruptions, and her calm dismantling of his attacks. Meanwhile, Crockett walked out of the chamber with the same steady composure she carried inside. Reporters shouted questions, but she simply smiled and said, "I think my words spoke for themselves." That one remark only fueled the storm further. Commentators on live broadcasts replayed the clip in slow motion, pointing out the exact moment Levin lost control, and the exact moment Crockett seized it. Across the political spectrum, people admitted it, she had turned the tables and left Levin speechless. By the end of the night, Crockett's sentence wasn't just a debate line, it was a national moment. By the next morning, the clip was everywhere. Talk shows opened with it, late-night hosts replayed it, and pundits on every network dissected Crockett's delivery. The one sentence had become the focal point of national discussion. On one panel, a commentator leaned back in his chair and said, "You could feel the power shift in that room." Levin thought he was dominating, but Crockett turned his aggression into his downfall. Others nodded, replaying the footage frame by frame, pointing out her calm smile against his frantic shouting. Social media only amplified the moment. Memes flooded in, side-by-side clips of Levin red-faced and shouting compared to Crockett's single cutting line. TikTok creators remixed her words with music, racking up millions of views. Twitter threads declared her the masterclass in composure. Levin, meanwhile, went quiet. His usual fiery responses online were noticeably absent. Instead, his supporters scrambled to reframe the moment, but the more they tried, the more the original clip spread. Crockett didn't gloat publicly. She let the silence work for her again, posting only a short message, "The truth speaks louder than the noise." That single tweet was shared tens of thousands of times, solidifying her as the winner not just of the hearing, but of the narrative. The exchange had gone far beyond politics, it had become a cultural moment, the kind people would replay for years. Levin finally broke his silence 2 days later. He went on his radio show, voice sharp and defensive, insisting that he had been set up and that Crockett's line was just a rehearsed stunt. He claimed the media had twisted the narrative, but his frustration seeped through every word. Clips from his broadcast were quickly clipped and shared online, and they backfired. Viewers noticed the bitterness in his tone, the lack of confidence that usually marked his style. Commenters flooded the replies, "This doesn't sound like the guy who won." He's still rattled. Meanwhile, Crockett's one sentence was still dominating headlines. Journalists contrasted her poised response with Levin's angry monologue, and the difference couldn't have been starker. One commentator put it bluntly on live TV, "If you're explaining days later, you're losing." Crockett didn't have to explain a thing. Her sentence stands on its own. Levin's attempt to rewrite the moment only cemented how badly it had gone for him. The more he talked, the clearer it became, Crockett had ended that exchange, and nothing he said could undo it. In the days that followed, Crockett's popularity surged. Her social media followers skyrocketed, and fundraising numbers quietly spiked as supporters rallied behind her composure and sharp delivery. She was invited onto major networks, where hosts praised her ability to stay calm under fire. During one primetime interview, the anchor asked her how she managed to keep her cool while Levin attacked non-stop. Crockett smiled slightly and said, "When you know the facts, you don't need to shout. The truth carries its own weight." That line instantly went viral too, reinforcing the moment even further. Levin, on the other hand, couldn't escape the fallout. His credibility had taken a visible hit. Commentators who once defended him now hesitated, some even admitting he had overplayed his hand. Every time the clip replayed, it reminded the public not just of Crockett's strength, but of Levin's unraveling. Across the country, ordinary viewers who normally didn't tune into hearings were sharing the video, tagging friends with captions like "This is how you handle a bully." The exchange had transcended politics, it became a lesson in composure, control, and the power of one well-timed sentence. Levin was still talking, still trying to explain, but the nation had already moved on. The moment belonged to Crockett. Weeks later, the moment was still being replayed. It had become more than just a heated exchange, it was etched into the political landscape. Crockett's one sentence was quoted in op-eds, highlighted in speeches, and even taught in communication workshops as an example of how composure can dismantle chaos. For Crockett, the impact was undeniable. Her profile rose nationally, not because she shouted the loudest, but because she stood her ground with precision. She gained new supporters, new invitations, and a reputation as someone who could take on relentless attacks and emerge stronger. For Levin, the damage lingered. Every new appearance he made was shadowed by that clip, every attempt to strike at an opponent met with echoes of his loss to Crockett. The phrase, "You shout, I serve," followed him like a ghost, a constant reminder of the night his aggression collapsed under her calm. History often forgets the noise, but it remembers the moments that cut through. Crockett's sentence wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a turning point. She didn't just silence Levin in that chamber, she redefined the entire exchange, proving that one well-placed line can outweigh hours of shouting. And long after the cameras stopped rolling, people still remembered it exactly the same way. Mark Levin attacked again and again, but Jasmine Crockett ended it, with just one sentence.